Hi, this is Eddie Deason. You're listening to Breaking the Fourth Wall. I was Mandark in Dexter's Laboratory. Ha 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 ha.
You are listening to Breaking the Fourth Wall on Realm of the Mist Entertainment. Hey, what's up, guys? Christopher Stolle back with another one, and I'll tell you what, I feel like I should not be calling myself Christopher Stolle. I almost feel like I should be calling myself the East Coast Kid or Chris Wilde again, which hasn't been for like 8 years. But the reason it being is because I'm sitting down, and I'm really honored to be sitting down for this one. As you guys know, on this show, I've interviewed celebrities like actors and writers and comic book men and stuff of that nature. Today is a day I get to go delving into one of my own histories with somebody who has not only been pivotal in community services as far as charity work and things like that, but also 27 plus glorious years of pro wrestling and managing and running his own federation. And also, unbeknownst to a lot of people, which we're going to dig into today, is a caring father, husband. There's just not enough I can say about the man. So, my honor to turn around and introduce to you guys Mr. DC Lurie, a.k.a. Dan Lauria. Dan, how you doing today? Did I lose you?
All right, how are you? I hope I can live up to all that hype you just did.
Was that enough? Was it over? Was it over the top? I can hear you fine. Was it enough? Was it over the top? Did I go a little too far? No. For people that don't know, I used to be a professional wrestler in independent circuit, and I finished off my career pretty much the way I started with a team known as Youth Gone Wild, and Mr. DC and I pretty much retired together because he was managing Youth Gone Wild, and well, he went back, I didn't. But our history goes way further than that. But before we even get into our history, I'd love for you to be able to finally tell the people your story, your history.
Oh, God, I thought this was only a half hour. I don't know if you have time for all that. But, all right, so I started 30-plus glorious years ago with an organization called Wrestling Fundraisers, which started in 1986. I came in a couple, 3 years after their first class. I came in just as Jimmy Jannetty and J.T. Smith were leaving for what eventually became ECW. And I could tell just from the few classes that I was in with those two, they were going to be absolutely phenomenal in this business. But yeah, so I wound up working with the Maluski twins, who were exactly that. I mean, they're identical twins. There was no work there. That was a straight shoot. And natural tag team, like the Gemini Trojans, if you remember them.
You might have to describe it for some of the listeners, because some of the people listening may not have any idea who they are.
The Maluski brothers or the Gemini Trojans?
All the above. You're talking 30 years ago. Some of the listeners weren't alive then.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, the short version is the Maluski brothers were natural identical twin brothers who worked in Pennsylvania, AWF and WFR. The Gemini Trojans were, again, natural a tag team because they were identical twins who worked in, I want to say, besides AWFR, DCW. I think that was their main fit.
Okay.
And I just always got a kick out of that. I always thought that, brothers in general, being a tag team or a six-man, were really cool. But then when you have, identical twins doing it, and I've worked with two sets, I just thought, that was pretty cool. But then, I always got a kick out of the Valiant brothers and how they mysteriously all of a sudden had a third brother that nobody ever talked about before.
That would be me. I'm the third brother nobody talks about. No.
Yeah, the redheaded. You always made yourself out to be the redheaded stepchild, though. That's on you, brother. That's not. I never did that.
We just accept our roles in life. But no. So what made you even get involved with professional wrestling? I know that beforehand you had aspirations of more of what I'm doing now, in the sense of like radio work, DJ, storytelling over the microphone.
Yeah. I was working for a magazine called ETC, Entertainment Talent Connection. And everybody always thought the name of the magazine was Etc. And I'm like, no.
Although it works out.
Yeah, right. And I would go back to the publisher and tell him that all the time. And he was like, no, we're keeping it the way it is. Okay, whatever. And I was a huge fan of, and this is really dating myself back now, of George Plimpton, who was a writer for Sports Illustrated and was famous in the fact that he didn't just like writing an article about an athlete or a sport in general. He liked to get down and dirty. He liked to get involved. Like, he actually tried out for the Detroit Lions at quarterback. He actually did a preseason game with the Boston Bruins, if I can get that out, against the Philadelphia Flyers, and he was the goalie for a preseason game. So, a couple of things like that, and I always thought that was really cool. So I happened to meet Katina Fletcher, who was the valet for Tony Atlas when he was the heavyweight champion at ICW, the Savolti brothers.
Okay.
And I asked her if I could do an interview, and she said the better person to talk to, because she was new to the business, was her mom, Sharon, who was a promoter in New Jersey, South Jersey. And I said, okay. So they bring me over to their house. They sit me down. I don't know these two girls from Adam, and yet they're trusting me with their lives, their secrets, the secrets of the business. I guess I just had an honest face. I don't know. and Sharon's like popping in VHS tapes of all these wrestlers in the tri-state area. I think most people should still remember what a VHS tape is. I'm guessing here.
They've seen it on throwbacks on Facebook. They know what it is.
And Tony the Technician, who I actually wound up working with at wrestling fundraisers, and a bunch of other people. And I mean, she really got into it because she was never a worker for just, I guess, normal people, for a wrestler. If you're a wrestler in the business, we refer to us as workers.
Right.
So she was never trained to be a former wrestler in the ring, but she was a promoter, and she knew what she was doing, from what I could tell, even back then. And instead of like what you and I would do, where we would work with somebody in a ring at some other promotion and then say, hey, why don't you come work with us? We're doing a show for charity, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
She had to pop in these tapes to see if the idea of say, Tony the Technician working against somebody else, just like random name, Mark Smart.
Right.
Person doesn't exist, but we'll make it up for the point of the story. And see if those two, styles worked,
Right.
And I'm like,
if there would be chemistry.
Exactly. And I was like, I didn't realize that it was that, time-consuming, that detail-oriented. I mean, 30 years later, yeah, we don't do that. But,
I was about to say, my memories, my memory 20 years in the business was, yeah, you walk in and somebody says, yeah, you're facing this guy. You may have never wrestled him before in your life, never been in a ring with him before in your life, and it's just like, okay, how long and how long and how's the finish?
Exactly. So, but I mean, she really got into it, and her attention to detail was incredible. So I said, being a George Plimpton fan, I said, is there any way that, as part of writing this story, I could actually get into the ring and talk about, actually working Tony, which ironically I actually wound up doing in practice, but I'll save that for later. And she was like, well, that you need a school for that. I don't run a school. I just run a promotion. And I said, well, what school, can you suggest that I could work out with? And she said, well, actually, I have the perfect one for you. And it was called Wrestling Fundraisers. And it was run by Moondog Spike, who claims to have been in the, back then it was WWWF.
I know Moondog.
And yeah, you would.
Yeah, I knew. I knew him when I was still a kid, and he would volunteer for the Jerry Lewis telethon here in Philadelphia. So I knew him
Would
back.
He bring his?
No. You're the only one with that
his collar and his.
Oh yeah. He came in gimmick and all that, and he would help guard. Okay. He would help guard the fishbowl. For when it wasn't on camera with Dave Roberts or Captain Noah. Okay. So I remember Moondog.
Interesting story behind Moondog. He came into the money to actually start Wrestling Fundraisers because he was on a game show as a contestant and won a lot of money.
Nice. I can't picture Moondog on Jeopardy.
I know, right? And he decided that he wanted to do charity work. He was a huge wrestling fan, and he wanted to do charity work. And to my knowledge, and no one has ever corrected me on this in 30 years, so they either don't know or I'm right. To my knowledge, Wrestling Fundraisers was the first all charity wrestling federation. In other words, any money that was put in was with the idea of raising money for the charity. Any proceeds made was given directly to the charity, and all of the wrestlers who were trained with the agreement that if they trained you, you were to be available for whenever they did a wrestling show.
Right.
So if it was a couple, 3, 4 a year, you needed to be available for that. That came first. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm working every weekend, then I'll just make sure I keep those dates free. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it was. Now I call it. We've paid our dues. Now we're paying it forward.
Right.
That's one of the taglines I use now. And the other two trainers were Stan Lavdis, who was known as the Greek Warrior in, again, WWF, and Artie Palmer, who was known, he was one of the Von Hellers. I think he was Baron. So, wait, was he Wolfgang? There was an Otto Von Heller and a Wolfgang Von Heller. I think he was Wolfgang. Okay. And no, they weren't actual brothers, and no, they weren't identical twins, obviously.
That's why he doesn't remember them as well. No.
Well, honestly, I always called him Artie because that's what I do.
Right. That's how I've ever known him. When you and I have had conversations about Artie, you've never once mentioned like a gimmick.
Well, because, and for the listeners, told this story on another radio show, literally just the other day. For those of us who've been in the business, and you'll understand this, you know, the first time we're introduced to somebody, that's what we call them from then on. You know,
pretty much. Like
so,
he's not wrong, because even to this day, like I said, I've retired from pro wrestling 8 years ago. I haven't been to a show. I haven't been involved in the business. I haven't even watched it on TV. Yet there are still people who, when they contact me, the first thing is, "Hey, Wild." I haven't been Matt Wild in 8 years, or Chris Wild in 8 years, yet that's still the name I'm known as in certain circles. I will never be known by my real name. They know it. They just refuse to use it.
You were Matt Wild somewhere else, right?
For most of my career, I started out as Matt Wild. Like I literally just told this conversation a couple days ago too. When I started out, they originally wanted me to be Matt Jericho, Chris Jericho's little cousin. Matt came from the fact at Grand Wrestling Alliance. It was at Grand Wrestling Alliance.
Grand Wrestling, okay.
And the reason for Matt is they thought I was a decent Matt wrestler. I was showing promise as a Matt wrestler, so that's where Matt came from. Jericho is because they said I reminded them of Chris Jericho, so that's why I should be Chris Jericho's little cousin. I didn't want to be a Mark gimmick, so that's where I came up with Wild. So Matt Wild was my name all the way up until I came back to Philadelphia, working with Doc Diamond and you and rebirthing Youth Gone Wild. And it was really Johnny Solo's fault that I became Chris Wild, because he like you said, the first you introduced yourself to somebody, the name you get introduced as is the name they remember. He could not for the life of him remember Matt Wild, because I was introduced to him as Chris. So as in the videos and in the introductions, all I kept saying was Chris Wild, Chris Wild. I'm like, well, that's my name.
That's what I always called you too.
Yes.
Well, okay, so Grand Wrestling Alliance. That was the Hawkins brothers.
Izzy Avalis.
Okay.
The Hawkins brothers was Pennsylvania Wrestling Alliance, PWA.
Pennsylvania. Okay, PW. Okay.
Which was the second federation I worked for.
What were you called at Hardwell Hamilton's place, Soul City Wrestling?
I was still Matt Wild. Like I said, I've been Matt Wild the majority of my career. The only time I ever stepped away from Matt Wild was when I came to Doc Diamond's, and I became Chris Wild inadvertently. I guess you can kind of count when I added on the moniker the East Coast Kid when I've had a face turn in Rocky Mountain Championship Wrestling. But I also had an alternate gimmick, which was a vampire. Antichrist vampire called the 13th Apostle, Christian Draconis, who had absolutely nothing to do with Matt Wild. It was just one of those things of like, I got bored playing Wild and came up with it, and we just gave a run to see how he did. He turned out to be a pretty popular character.
Do you remember when there was so much like confusion? Are you Chris? Are you Matt? I'm like, why don't you just call yourself CM Wild?
Yeah. Which again, everything in this business goes full circle. I refused to be Matt Jericho because I didn't want to be a Mark gimmick, and here my manager was like, well, to fix the confusion, why don't you just be CM Wild? I'm like, yeah, nobody will see CM Punk in that.
No, not at all.
Everything goes full circle in this business.
That's exactly what you said to me when I said it to you in the first place.
So okay, let's fast forward here. You went
I'm
to.
Sorry, I apologize. I'm used to doing interviews too, so I'm going to be.
Oh yeah,
not to ask you questions while you're asking me questions.
No, the thing listeners have to realize is Dan and I have been friends for going on 10, 11 years now. And longer if you count the story that we will probably get to.
With the flying elbow pads?
Yeah, the flying elbow pads. But the one thing Dan and I are very accustomed to is we will go off on tangents, and one of us always has to remember to bring us back into the fold. So this one's going to be a long interview, guys.
Okay.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy. But to get us back on topic, so you went to wrestling fundraisers, started training with Arnie and company, and from there, was it just like you were going to do a tryout so that way you had a taste for the article, or was it something like when you took that first bump, you just laid there a second and was like, "This is it. This is what I want."
The last one.
The last one.
Because I still haven't. I still haven't written that article 30 years later.
Well, that's why I was curious. Like, did you do the tryout? And, okay. You know, you're first thinking to yourself, like, okay, I've got what I need to write the article, or along the lines of it, that first real bump, and you're just like, oh, this is what I want. Like, all of a sudden, the article's nothing. It's now I want to be a wrestler. Where do I pay? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, see, if you've never been, you have, but for your listeners, if you've never been in the ring, like the idea of like falling down on purpose, or running into steel cables, which are called the ropes, okay, might not sound very appealing, okay. But what a lot of people don't understand is there's a lot of physics involved, okay, and there's a lot of it's called professional wrestling behind the fact that there's the basis of the sport is amateur wrestling, what we call collar and elbow, holds, grips, and but it's a lot like judo in that you learn how to fall, literally. Like, I can't tell you how many people in the business that Chris and I have seen the memes, that it's or I guess posts or comments,
right?
That they fell down during a snowstorm, or like they slipped on ice, and they took a perfect bump and got up like nothing happened, and everybody's like standing around them saying, "How are you not dead?"
I've done it myself. I can't lie. I've done it myself. Hit that slick patch out of nowhere, and it just when you're a wrestler, it's instinctive to fall into the protective ways that we fall. And
exactly. So
when I went down, man, like automatically tuck the chin, protect the elbow, or not the elbow, the tailbone. Hit that, exhale before impact. Was able to get right back up and just brush it off and walk away.
Yeah, and I when I was at Penn State, I was actually on the karate club there. Okay. And then when I transferred to Temple University, I was asked to be the assistant judo instructor with my friend Norm Massera, who was the official judo instructor, because I had taken his class before and I would spar with him. And he was like, "Well, you know everything I'm going to teach. Help me out." I'm like, "Okay." And then when my goddaughter Erin, who was friends with somebody who was on the Upper Darby High School, their amateur wrestling team, she asked me to come meet her friend, so I went, and then the coach asked me if there was anything that I could show them, that might help. And I said, well, I didn't do amateur wrestling. I have a martial arts background, so I don't know what's legal.
Right.
I don't want to show you the wrong thing, and then you get a point against, But come to find out that the way I teach, and this from working, helping me out with my schools, the way I teach how to throw somebody at the beginning, okay, is I keep the student tucked in, close to my body, so that they can feel the fall, before I send them, do it the right way and send them flying in the air, like I used to do with Skittles all the time. That's another story. Um, and come to find out that in amateur, when you grab somebody and take them down for the fall, and a fall counts, as well as a pin, as long as you keep them in tight, okay, and don't throw them like away from you like you would in Aikido, which is hard to explain on the phone or radio or podcast. But in judo, you keep them in tight when you throw somebody. In Aikido, you throw them away from you. It's really the only way I can explain it off the top of my head.
Right.
And when I teach the judo version, okay, and then the proper wrestling version. And they said, well, actually, the way you teach your students at the professional level is exactly what we can use at the amateur level. I'm like, cool, perfect.
Well, I've tried to explain that to people before, not necessarily on a podcast, but when asked about like pro wrestling, I've always considered now the kayfabe's completely out the window. We could discuss it. I've always considered it kind of stunt work, because what we do is absolutely real, but how we do it is because of the fact that we have learned things like the bumps, the falls, to protect ourselves, to protect our opponents in the move, to soften the impact or whatever the case may be. But like I've always said before, you can't fool gravity. It's still stunt. That being said, though, there is absolutely correlation to everything we do falls under either martial arts jiu-jitsu or Roman Greco / collegiate shoot wrestling. In every sense of the word. I think the only thing that would be, and I will, people can't see this on the audio cast here, but quotations here. The only thing that would be fake, I would say, is we pull the punches and kicks, and even that's not always pulled. Depends on who you're in the ring with.
Yeah. Yes.
I've had a couple people that didn't get the concept of a worker punch.
Yeah. Do you remember Scotty Ice?
I remember Scotty Ice. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, he used to get hot when somebody potatoed him. Oh my God! I meant to work with him in a tag team a couple of different times and never got the opportunity. And I remember one time, I don't know what the kid did, but he did something wrong, and Scotty lost it. And in the middle of a match, okay, and like ripped off the kid's shirt and started chopping him only because I've worked with Patch the most recently, because Patch and Raphael were famous for their chops. Okay,
it's actually funny. It's actually funny. And that just popped right back into my head. You remember the first meeting of the Latin Connection versus Youth Gone Wild when we first came back as the AWFR 6-man champions, and Raph was doing what Raph does. He was just lighting up everybody. He lit up oh my God, Frankie Frizzo. He lit up Tony Amadeus, and he lit up me, and then I shocked him because he took his eyes off me. And what's rule number 1 when you take the eyes off somebody? Reverse the heat. So I punched him in the face, put him in the corner, and I fucking downward chopped him. And the look on his face, like, this motherfucker. You remember that?
It's one of the reasons. Yeah, one of the reasons why I never took my eyes off of somebody. I wanted to know it was coming.
He took his eyes off me to play with who was the rep at that time? That was Logan, Jesse Logan. He wanted to chase away Jesse Logan, and I just I knuckled him in the chin, turned him around in the corner, chopped his ass, whipped him off, gave a drop kick, and I rolled out real quick to tag in Tony because I knew what was coming. Because Raph's the veteran, and he's like, this motherfucker just cut me off. I knew some pain was coming my way.
I was the referee for a match with Raph and Scotty Ice, and they had decided to have a chop fest square in the middle of the ring. Okay, and I'm literally standing right there. There's nothing I can do. I mean, a chop is a legal move in wrestling, so if they want to sit there and trade chops, it's legal. And my hands are tied. But they lit each other up. Like at one point, I wasn't sure who was making the bigger ooh, me or the fans. I think we had synchronized it at one point. That stuff looked like that hurt, man.
I took on a guy in Colorado whose name was Rowdy Knight, and he was famous in Rocky Mountain Championship Wrestling for his chops. And of course, me being the all balls and no meat behind those balls, I'm like, dude, we'll chop off, right? Because I'm pretty proud of the chop. I know I've got a hard one too. So in the middle of the match, we're doing the chop off, and I mean he's got my chest bleeding. Yeah, he's hitting hard, but I'm coming back at him, and I frustrated him enough. I know why. He laughs about this to this day. I frustrated him so much with the chop because I wouldn't give up and just move on. He chopped me in my forehead. He gave a downward chop straight to my dome to finally end the chop off. And that sucker gave a thunderclap. I don't remember much of it.
Yeah, it's like it cracks me up when you're bleeding. I think it was Ric Flair. I'm not absolutely positive, but I think it was Ric Flair who had a chop off with like Wahoo McDaniel or somebody else who was like famous for it, Ronnie Garvin, somebody who was famous for it, and like the next, he didn't take care of it properly the next day, so there was pus coming out, and one of the medical staff had to go like you don't, again, getting back to the it's fake in quotations, you don't fake being so red that you're purple, okay, or black and blue, pick the color, and you're bleeding to the point where pus is coming out and you need medical attention before you can, go deal with your match for that night. No, stop. Did you ever see a show called Wrestling Isn't Wrestling?
No, I think I've heard the name title, but I don't think I've ever seen it. No.
It for you and for your listeners, if you ever get a chance, it's on YouTube. It'll come right up. Just YouTube search Wrestling Isn't Wrestling. And I'm not familiar with the person who is the host or narrator of whatever you want to call it, but he sits there and he talks about professional wrestling, and he uses Triple H, who is one of he's a huge fan of Triple H. So he says, I'm going to explain wrestling to you by using one person, the story of one person, as my, this is what happened to him, and this is what happens in the business. And he's so literally from the very beginning to the very end, the 20-year career of, it was 20 years when he made this. Of Triple H, and when he got to DX, I thought of you and Tony immediately.
Yeah, fuck you too. No, we were Youth Gone Wild was before DX. I just want to go on record. We were first.
Yeah, but weren't one of you is a huge fan of Triple H, and the other one was a huge fan of Shawn Michaels?
That is true. Yes, Tony modeled originally when Tony into the business. His major model was Kurt, Mr. Perfect. That was his boy. He kind of adopted Triple H. I was always Michael from the Rocker days. Michaels and Bret Hart, which is ironic because as you remember, when I used to train, one of the things I used to tell people all the time is you really want to know what kind of wrestler you should become and be able to tell a story in the ring and keep people captivated. I would always tell them to watch the Iron Man match from WrestleMania 12.
Okay.
Because, they spent 20 minutes in the ring without a legitimate bump. and kept the crowd on their feet. It just chain wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know who's really good at that? Joey Rizzo. I don't know if you remember him. He, I believe Billy Highlight Reel is the one who trained him, if I remember correctly.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Joey's got a school in Franklinville, New Jersey.
Okay.
And it's called Shoot Style. And I can sit there and watch him teach a new student how to chain wrestle forever, because he just goes from move to move to move in a flawless combination. And like when other students, like this has actually happened, other students will be watching and he'll be working with a student and then just forget, you know, that like other students are watching and trying to keep up. And they'll be like, what did he just do? It's like, I'll slow it down for you once he's finished.
Well, we
you know, and
you, me, and Tony.
A thing of beauty.
You, me, and Tony had that bad habit when we were training at docks. You know, working out with people. We'd start on chain, and we would automatically just go into the mindset of fish out of water. It's like, okay, I put you in this, and then you reverse it with this, and then all of a sudden we just forget about it. It's like, you know what? We're just going to keep going. Like they'll continue reversing back into a hammer lock, but we're reversing it into 15 different other reverses, and like we're not explaining shit because it's like, dude, it's fun. It's fun to chain wrestle. I don't get why people are so against it in today's society, generation of wrestling. It is just fun to chain.
Yeah, and if you remember, I would, because I go so far back, I would be like, that's not a chicken wing. This is a chicken wing. And this is it with the safety lock, and this is it without the safety lock. And everybody's like, what's a safety lock?
I remember you yelling at me when I started showing off new chain moves that I invented, you know, or came up with, or reversals that I invented. You're like, that's not legal. How do you know it's not legal? It's never been invented till now.
Well, I think what I was trying to say is show them the basics before you get all complicated.
True. Yeah, that's true. Nobody's seen it till now.
I remember one time somebody calling a Phil Nelson a master lock, and I almost lost it on the person. It's like, that's not what it's called.
You know, it's funny because you bring up something that I've always laughed at too, because a lot of people, even legitimate, trained, been in the business for a long time, people, you know, they'll slip and use the I call them mark names for moves, the Frankensteiner, the the 619 or whatever, instead of using their legitimate names. You know, like the perfect example, the Frankensteiner is a Hurricane Rana. Its legitimate name is the Hurricane Rana. You know, but when people are describing it or talking about it, they automatically just want to go to the name, or not the shoot, excuse me, the gimmick name from some wrestler. And then there's very few moves that do have a legitimate name named after the wrestler who, I guess, invented it. Case in point, like the Thez press or the Zhujian Liger bomb, you know, for example. But more often than not, the moves that you hear in wrestling, especially WWE with finishers and shit, that has a legitimate name. But what is funny to me is that the thing that a lot of people forget about is these professional wrestlers, from the WWE down to the independent circuit, these guys are still fans, and girls are still fans. So sometimes, to me, it's just funny. Like, they know the legitimate name of the move, they know how to do the move, right, but the fan in them comes out when they start. Yeah, I'm gonna give you a Frankenstein. No, you're not.
Well, interesting thing about that is, again, I go so far back that I was one of the first people in the Indies to actually learn how to do the Frankensteiner and actually use it in a match.
Okay.
But because it was called the Frankensteiner when I started doing it, that's what I thought it was called. Then you come to find out that it was actually called, using your pronunciation, in either Japan or Mexico. Okay,
Right.
so I was guilty of exactly what you're talking about because I did the Frankensteiner, and I called it the Frankensteiner because I was one of the first ones. Until somebody called it a hurricanrana, and I'm like, no, that's not what it's called. It's called this, and they were like, no, it actually goes back further than what you saw on TV, and then learn how to do it at school, at wrestling school. I'm like, oh, okay, who knew?
Well,
But then with I also used to do the Garvin Stomp,
right.
which, to my knowledge, that's what it's always been called because he's the first one I ever saw do it. And as homage, of course, that's what I continue to call it. But then when I saw Orton do it and they called it the Orton Stomp, I almost broke the TV. I was like, that's not what it's called.
Yet there are rare occasions. Thinking about it, and we mentioned it earlier with Tony, with him being a Mr. Perfect fan. It's kind of funny because some moves actually took on a different name because of the wrestler made it so popular. Case in point is the Perfect Plex. We know it's a fisherman suplex, but nobody calls it the fisherman anymore because of Mr. Perfect. Like even within the business, we just call it the Perfect Plex. I guess because he perfected it.
Well, now combine that with somebody who has, and I apologize for what I'm about to say, but I've tried to study amateur wrestling. Okay, I've tried very hard to study, but because my wrestling background was professional first, and then trying to learn the back history of the amateur version, okay? I've always had a hard time trying to get into it, if you will, versus like if I watch somebody's just grappling and it's a freestyle. Okay, well now I don't have to sit there and worry about the rules and worry about what counts as a pin, or for points or whatever. It's freestyle grappling. It's like, okay, who's tapping out of this shit? Well, now, because of my martial arts background, and I don't claim to be an expert in any of the ones I'm about to say, but I've studied them. Goju, Jiu-Jitsu, actually German Jiu-Jitsu as opposed to the Brazilian, Judo, the form of karate, the Korean karate that I took when I was 11, and I don't even remember which one that was. Because I'm a lot older than 11 now. The same move can actually be called several different things in several different styles.
True.
Okay? Like, just the word master, in one style it's called sensei.
Right.
Like in judo, it's called sensei. In something else, it's like I was passing by a place around the corner from my house, and it's a certain type of style of kung fu. And don't ask me what style because I don't. I'm lucky I remembered that it was kung fu. Okay, and I remember that the master was called Shifu. Now, I've never heard of a master of a martial art being called Shifu before, other than in Kung Fu Panda.
Which is fitting.
Yeah.
Means they got it right.
And I'm like, oh, that's a thing? What I can do on a mat and a ring versus my vocabulary are two different things. Okay? But you know that to be true of me behind the fact that I can show you a move. I can show you every variation that I'm aware of. Hook, work, hook, shoot, and then other variations from those, But don't ask me to tell you all the different names of well, if it's this, it's that. If it's that, it's this. It's like, I don't care. Because if it's other than work, I don't care what it's called. Am I taking you out and convincing you verbally after I physically have you in the hold that this is a really bad idea for you continue, to try to come at me in a bar or on the street. I don't care what it's called.
Right. The only person that has to care about what the name of the move really is the commentators anyway. As long as we have the educated commentators and not like the ones that just use silly names because they couldn't think of the legitimate name for the move. But no, you're right. But we got to get back on this here. So you got through the training. Who was your first match?
Hold on. Hold on. Let me explain one thing to the listeners so because they might be a little confused. Well, don't you have to know, let me give you an example.
Okay.
I have a suplex that I do that I've never seen anybody do it, and I'm sure it's a variation on a type of suplex, okay? But I was working with a girl student, and one of the ones I do is like a full Nelson, but I put them into full Nelson in reverse so that instead of them standing up with their head, the back of their head to me, I actually bend them down and then put them in the full Nelson, and then, take a back bump, okay? Well, it was a girl. She was new. I didn't want to kill her, okay? So I said, let me try something. And I said, let me try a variation on my variation. And she was rolling down, so I had to be careful not to, get personal, if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Right.
But when you're teaching somebody who's female, you still have to be aware of they exist and try to stay away from them so it doesn't become something else,
It's very hard to work with a female wrestler as a male wrestler because it's a fine line between work and sexual harassment. That's basically what he's saying.
Especially if she's rolling down, because now you have to be careful where you put your hand.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, all right, so let me show you what I'm going to do. So, I put her in the hold, and basically I took her head, bent it down, okay? So now she's sort of looking at the mat, okay? I grabbed her, if anybody knows where the solar plex is. So it's basically underneath her chest, but because she's bent down, it's like I'm actually above her chest, even though if she was standing up, I'm below it, okay?
Right.
And then I said, all right, I'm going to take a back bump. All you have to do is take the back bump with me. You don't have to do a thing. Just take the bump. Okay? Well, took her over, took the bump, and she's like, how did it feel? Okay. I'm like, all right, so now if anybody's ever been trained by me and they know that move, you know how to take the fall instead of getting killed, basically.
Right.
And she said, what do you call it? I'm like, it's just a modified suplex. I don't have a name for it. I just know how to do it. I'm like, this would look really cool, because I don't want to do the same thing everybody else is doing because then it looks boring. So I like to modify things. And in a street fight, I'm not going to be as merciful, so it's going to have a devastating effect. I don't have a name for it. You fucking come up with one. Pardon my French, but it doesn't need a name. I'm showing somebody here. Here's a suplex. Here's a modified suplex. This is one of the ways I do it to make it look different from anybody else. Can you handle this? Yeah.
I have old school Chris Jericho running through my head in WCW when he had the man of 1,000 holds when he was feuding Dean Malenko, and he was like the arm bar, the modified arm bar, the first modified arm bar.
Yes, because I was always one of those type of people who got into the Dean Malenkos and the Billy Robinsons of the world, because I didn't want to see the same thing every single. Look, I love Ric Flair. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
If anybody says Ric Flair isn't one of the greatest wrestlers who ever lived, my first thought would say, I would say, fight me. But I'm almost 60, so like that, you know, I'll make the verbal argument rather than the physical one at this point in my life. But
Geritol drink off.
one could make the argument that that Ole Anderson was not wrong when he said that if you've seen one Ric Flair match, you've seen them all. Now, I would come back with, yes, but how many people in this business can work a match for 60 minutes and not do the same thing twice? So, yeah, if you could work a 60-minute match, you may see the same thing in another match at some point because it went on for 60 minutes.
Right.
So, anyway, what was your question? Who was my first match?
Yeah.
Jason Python's Weiss.
All right. How'd that go for you?
It literally set up my career because I wrestled or was in training to become a wrestler for a year and a half as a tag team specialist. Okay. I was completely enamored by the Von Erichs, the whole feud, the Von Erichs versus the Freebirds, the Midnight Express versus the Rock and Roll Express, the Valiants versus whoever, Tony Garea and Larry Zbyszko, or whoever Tony Garea's partner was at the time. I loved tag team wrestling. Loved it, okay? The synchronized moves, your timing had to be absolutely perfect in order to pull off. If you weren't just two singles, who were in there as, just because you were setting up something else. If you were a bona fide tag team specialist, then everything had to be perfect, like a dance, like ballet, like figure skating, it cheerleading. Everything had to be synchronized perfectly, otherwise it was going to look like shit, or even worse, somebody was going to get hurt.
Right.
Okay. And I just thought that was the most brilliant thing that I've ever seen, and that's what I trained for with. Wait for it, the original South Philly Fury. That it goes back so far that we weren't even called South Philly Fury yet. With my partner Jason Python's Weiss, and we were training against another tag team who had come in at the same time that we did, called High Voltage. Okay. So I just assumed naturally that the first match I was ever going to have in front of people was going to be me and my partner, DC Lurie, and well, at the time, DC Lauria, because Frank Talon hadn't butchered my name yet, and my partner, Jason Python's Weiss, right? And because I was a high flyer, I was toying with the name Freebird, because there's an Ultimate Warrior, there's a Dingo Warrior, there's the Road Warriors. Why couldn't there be another Freebird other than the Fabulous Freebirds? Like, I was a high flyer. That was, believe it or not, that was unusual back then. Now everybody does it.
Right.
But back then it was not unusual. So and I wanted to be like Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Like he was another hero of mine, and I would do like the frog splash off the top rope and the flying crossbody. But there's not too much you could do with that to pay homage to one of your heroes. What do you do with Superfly? It's like
right.
Dragonfly. I literally just thought of that.
There you go. Now you got it.
Right. But with the Freebirds, I could be like, okay, well, I could be like the Philly Freebird or the Philadelphia Freebird, or like it was a work in progress,
Right.
So, all right, Freebird, DC, Lauria, Jason Python's Weiss. I mean, we were using our real names,
right?
Just with a quotation, either in the front or the middle. And come at the day of the show, in the locker room, at call. For listeners, call is when you're supposed to be there. Okay, it's like if the show's at 7:30, you're supposed to be there at 5:30. So your call is 2 hours before the show starts.
Unless you're pulling a wild, which is another story for another day.
Another story altogether. Yes.
So anyway, sorry.
And Stan Lavdis, who was the head promoter, let's say for sake of argument, okay. I come to find out, and I didn't notice at the time, we had a cross promotion with us that whenever we ran AWF, okay, that's where I came up with AWFR, because the cross promotion was AWF, we were WFR, so when I took over, I called it AWFR in homage for Al the Bounty Hunter, but I'll get to that in a minute.
Right.
Stan tells me, okay, I mean, kayfabe is broken completely, right? I can tell this story, what I'm about to say. Well, you already mentioned it earlier. Okay. Stan tells me, all right, it's you against Jason, and if you're paying attention, Jason's my partner. You're the heel, which means I'm calling the match. Okay. You guys have 10 to 12, and he's going over. I'm like, there was nothing I liked in that entire sentence. Okay,
man.
And I'll tell you why. I'm going up against my partner, not the two guys that I've been working against for an entire year, okay, to start a feud with, but the guy that I've been tagging in and out for that year. So, like, we've never worked against each other, ever. Okay? The only thing we've done together is tag in and out. That was, and set up somebody for a move. Like, I know how to do a double elbow with him. I don't know how to, like throw an elbow at him. There's a difference. Okay? All right.
But at the same time, there is to be said that when you partner well enough, he's the perfect opponent for you because you know each other so well.
Yeah, but I didn't know that at the time.
True.
I'm literally brand new out of the box. Come on. All right. So now I'm furious for the first reason. I'm working against instead of with. Okay.
Right.
I'm the heel. I'm 5'8", and nowhere near the 222 pounds that I am now.
Wrestling billing.
He was 5'10". No, I really am 222.
No, I mean wrestling billing back in the day. I'm remembering I was, if I turn sideways and stick my tongue out, I think I'm a zipper back when I was wrestling, but build at least 180. I was nowhere near 180 at that time.
There it is. You just explained to your audience where I was coming from on that one.
Yep.
I was the zipper that you speak of. He's 5'10", 190, and I mean a solid, like he was meant to be a wrestler.
Right.
Type of thing, And I'm like, how am I supposed to be? I'm the little guy. You don't tell Ricky Morton to go up against Robert Gibson and say, by the way, Ricky, you're the heel in this. What? Okay. So I'm the one calling the match. Remember what I said? I know how to do it. Don't necessarily know what it's called half the time.
Yep.
I'm the one telling him this is what we're going to do. Are you kidding me right now? Okay. So 3 reasons to be pissed off. He's going over. Wait, what? I'm the one who found the school. I'm the one who recruited my tag partner and the 2 guys we're going up against. I'm the reason why you make money off the 4 of us in the first place. And he's the one going over?
Welcome to pro wrestling.
So In my mind, there's not one good reason why this match exists other than to piss me off. And I don't know how well, actually, I don't know if you remember exactly what I looked like back then, but I was like the poster boy for baby faces. Okay? I was the ladies' man. I was not the man's man. No, not even close. So I'm supposed to act the fool and the heel and the bad guy with, like, I look like I just got out of diapers. I looked like I was 12. It made no sense. And then I come out, ladies and gentlemen, from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, introducing the Freebird, D.C. Laurie. Okay, now the son of a bitch just mispronounced my name.
This almost feels like the Spider-Man movie, doesn't it?
I am so hot. It's the Deputy Commissioner, Frank Tillett, who, God rest his soul, great guy, loved him to death. But I'm assuming he was English or Irish. I mean, his name is Talent, okay? So, and since he was a legal person, I'm assuming that was his real name, not a gimmick name.
Right.
So I go up to him, grab the mic out of his hand, which is a final sense. I could have been kicked out of wrestling in Pennsylvania. Didn't care anymore, okay? My debut match, everything's going wrong before I even get into the ring. Grab the mic, trying to figure out how I'm supposed to pull off being the heel in all this. It's the Freebird DC Lauria, you Mulligan! And throw the mic at him. And then go march into the ring.
Welcome to heel status.
Yeah. I was over before I even got in the ring because I was so hot that I didn't have to worry about trying to act the bad guy. I was ready to kill somebody. And that's been my gimmick.
Well, up until you teamed up with two idiots from Philadelphia years and years and years later. But we'll get to that. That's a long road ahead. All right, so you had your first match, and I'm assuming the match went well. So you had that at least to be happy about, right?
Well, nobody complained about it, so I seem the only one who had a problem with the match, and I was over it. Like, when it was over, I was happy to have gotten through it, because my big thing was, how am I going to pull this off?
Right.
Okay. Once the match was over and nobody booed.
Yeah, nobody was screaming, "This is how Bischoff got fired."
Yeah, nobody threw tomatoes at me. Nobody booed. Which is, if you get to see wrestling isn't wrestling, that nobody threw tomatoes is actually going to be even funnier. But nobody complained. Nobody said that was the driveling shits. We and you know how wrestling is. If nobody bitches and complains and gives you like a page full of notes as what you could have done better, you had a good match, or a good enough match, for a first match.
That's true. That's something for aspiring wrestlers out there who want to get into the business. Do not get into this business looking for a pat on the back and an attaboy, because 9 times out of 10, it's not coming. Silence is your congratulations.
I'm. Matter of fact, I'm still not sure if I've ever gotten a pat on the back for a match. But I keep on getting hired, so I guess I'm doing something.
I was about to say, I don't think I've ever gotten the attaboy and pat on the back for a match, but I've gotten it one time. But more often than not, it was the promos and the skits that people would compliment on. Well, you know this. People fought.
Yeah, because I've been in half of them with you. So yes, we've gotten compliments on that.
people have fought to be either mentioned or involved in our skits. So
yes, yeah. So yeah, but I mean, I'm assuming everything went well because I was handed my envelope. There was the exact money that I was promised would be in it.
Wait, you got paid for your first match?
Yeah, of course I did.
Oh fuck!
It was wrestling fundraisers. We did things differently.
Fuck! I'm gonna have to yell at the Harkins guys.
No, this wasn't Hawkins.
No, I know. I'm gonna have to. No, I haven't gotten. Oh. I didn't see a paycheck till my third year. I always got the it's exposure, kid. I always got the it's the exposure, kid.
I was making $25 right off the bat.
Oh Jesus!
You know? Why do you think I paid everybody $25 when I reopened AWFR? It was an homage.
I thought it was because it was your 25 glorious years.
Yeah. Well, wait, no, that didn't come till later.
I know.
And then my first outdoor match with wrestling fundraisers is where you come in.
Yep. Okay. I knew we were going to eventually get to that.
My first outdoor match. Now, imagine how pissed off I was for my first indoor. Now imagine my first outdoor, and it's a 180-degree difference, okay? It's at Morgantown, Pennsylvania State Fair. Mm-hmm. So people are already there for the State Fair, and we're in the middle of everything, so people are like, you were guaranteed an audience. Okay. Like, I can honestly say that there were hundreds, if not thousands, of people watching our matches at one time or another, just because of we were like center location at the State Fair, and I was stoked. I was like, oh my God, I'm a high flyer. I don't have to worry about a friggin' roof. I'm going to go up to every turnbuckle and do a different high-flying maneuver from each one, from each post. So I literally came up with 4 different moves, one for each post, okay, when I came off the top rope. And I did it. I did all, and in fact, when I won, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but when I won, and the fans were saying, one more, like, I'm like shocked because I'm like, what, you want me to go up again? Yeah, one more. Well, I had put the guy in a sleeper coming off a flying cross body. So he's lying prone on his back, eyes shut, not knowing what day it is, with the referee being his only protection from this fool of an idiot being me, going up one more time to please the fans because they want to see me go up one more time after I've already knocked them out with the flying crossbody and the sleeper after it. Problem number 1, I don't have a 5th move.
Right.
I was like, there's 4 turnbuckles. There's, I'm going to go up 4 times off of all 4 posts and 4 moves. I didn't have it. Like, it didn't even occur to me to have a 5th one. Like, how many times do you have 4, let alone having a 5th one? Right? So, there was that. So I had nothing practice, and I'm sure the Hawkins brothers and everybody else taught you, the Pitbulls, everybody who trained you, don't ever do something that you weren't properly trained for in the gym and in the school.
If you haven't practiced it, don't do it. Yep.
Exactly. Okay. So that's number 1. Number 2, my opponent, again, who no longer knows what day it is, doesn't know this is coming. Okay. Number 3, the referee, who's already given me the win, tells me, and is now blocking me, so I have to jump over him in order to get to the member of High Voltage. And yes, I finally got to fight them.
Oh, and number 4, let's not forget, attacking somebody after the match is over. Kind of a heel move.
Yeah, well, no, I was the heel.
That people love for some reason. you were pulling in Austin.
Yeah. Yeah. So, So like I'm surprised I didn't get yelled at when I went back in the locker room because I'm supposed to be the heel and the fans are chanting for me. But anyway, so the referee is literally telling me that now he's in my way. The fans are chanting one more time, one more time. The referee's yelling at me, "Don't do it, or I'll take away your win and give it to him." And in my head, I'm thinking, wait, he's actually the vice president of the company. He could probably do that. And I don't want to lose my first match outside when I'm supposed to be a high flyer.
Nice.
So I'm like, all right, fine. So I look at the fans. I'm like, he won't let me. I want to, but he won't let me. So now they start booing the referee. Not me, the referee.
And see, you
So
could have taken your bow out right there.
Yeah. I go back over to Mr. Electro because it was Dr. Shock and Mr. Electro. I go back over to Mr. Electro, pick him up, wake him up. I was so upset I didn't even give him a cheap shot at that point. Like, whatever, I won. I'm out of here, right? But setting up because I like to do things in combination. So every finish I have is always a combination. I'll go from one thing to the other just to look different from everybody else. And I've never seen somebody do a flying cross body and then from that put somebody in a sleeper. But I figure I'm not a big guy. Somebody might say, okay, well, you don't even weigh 200 pounds soaking wet. Like, was the flying cross body enough to knock him out or daze him long enough for you to get the pin? So what I would do is, coming off the flying cross body, he's prone on the ground, back to the mat. So when I came off the flying cross body, I would come in from behind him, pick him up by the hair, because I am still supposed to be the heel after all.
Right.
Okay? And from him being in the sitting position, still dazed, put him in the sleeper, knock him out completely, then 1, 2, 3. Right?
It makes a sense to it. There's a psychology to it.
Yeah. And, wanting to be different, wanting to prove the fact that I'm, you can't face physics. I'm coming off the ropes, full speed, whatever the speed of gravity is. Hitting him, dazing him, putting him to sleep. There is such a thing as a real, sleeper. That's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually knock somebody out with it. So I'm not faking gravity. I'm not faking the move. This is all fact. Okay. But I was so excited to set up because, I'm like, all right, I got him now. I'm gonna do my finishers, because there's two.
Right.
I throw my elbow pads outside of the ring. Now, I didn't mean to throw my elbow pads outside of the ring. I meant to throw them at the turnbuckles so that they would, kick off the post and, drop down to the inside corner. Well, you know what happens when you're excited. You get enthusiastic, the adrenaline's going. Both of them sailed in different directions because I didn't even, throw them in one direction. I threw them in two different directions. Okay? And, $25 was a lot of money back then. And, I was like, all right, well, there goes my pay towards new elbow pads. Didn't think I was ever going to see them again. Come out of the ring, they're still chanting. I'm like, all right, well, I'm in trouble because the fans just did a face turn for me. But at least I got the win, and at least I got my name right, because I think at that point I was going with Freebird DC Lurie, figuring, fuck it, I'll just go with it, And here comes this 15-year-old kid out of the audience. And for you listeners, just in case you don't know who I'm getting ready to talk about, I believe this kid, who's now grown, describes himself as a zipper.
He's no longer a zipper. That kid's no longer a zipper.
But back then you were a 15-year-old, fresh-faced, I could tell you in high school, comes up to me with my elbow pads. Like, I love this kid right now. I literally felt like saying, "You are my best friend." And again, if you go watch Wrestling Isn't Wrestling, that line's going to be even funnier.
Okay. The setup behind this was because of also on that show was a manager slash named Evil Woman Mr. Sapane, whose real name was Terry Fallon. Yes. And Terry and her husband.
Real names.
Yeah. And Terry and her husband Bob have been involved in the independent wrestling circuit for a very long time. Bob was a referee, and she was manager slash female wrestler. They also volunteered for my grandfather's youth group with the United States Naval Sea Cadet Corps, which I was a member of, and so was her son Eddie. And she had talked Eddie into inviting me and a couple other cadets to go see the show. It just had just to set up on how I wound up this show. So sorry.
And I don't know any of this. Okay, I don't know who you are. Terry Fallon was actually one of my best friends in the business at the time. I wish we're not enemies, but we're still friends. But we used to hang out all the time because Dan used to send me and Terry in order to go be the mouthpiece for WFR in negotiations for things. So we spent a lot of time together. Okay, and all these kids later, it's like it's hard to hang out with somebody when you're trying to raise kids.
Right.
Stuff happens.
Of course.
And but I mean, there's no heat between me and Terry at all. Like I still consider her my friend. We still talk on Facebook, and she's very excited to see that AWFR school's opening up again. And but anyway, so I don't know that she brought you. Like we didn't. This is not a conversation we had ahead of time. I just, you're some kid who was came up to me and was kind enough to go find my pads, and I don't know if you had to rip them out of somebody else's hand or nobody cared, but I know you had to go in two different directions to get them.
Well, I caught one. I looked for the other. I think I just found it on the ground.
Okay. And so you asked me. You tell me that you're a huge fan, not of me, just of the business in general. I think it's the first time you ever saw me.
Right.
And what advice could I give you in order to get in the business? Now, again, to the listeners, I'm supposed to be the bad guy. This is almost 30 years ago, so I'm not even supposed to be talking to this kid. I should be face palming the little... but he brought me back my pads, so now I don't have to spend my envelope on getting new ones.
To be fair, they were kind of sweaty.
Well, of course they were. I was very excited to.
They were very sweaty, and I was actually looking to get them autographed, but the bastard took my hands and... No. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You never even... I would have. You never even mentioned that part.
No, I'm joking. I was giving them back. I was trying to set you up as the heel here, damn it. This guy, 15-year-old, was holding the knee pad or the elbow pad, saying, "Can you please autograph these? Give these back to me. You don't deserve these. Walk away. You could have sold that." No.
I'm sorry. I missed my cue. I apologize.
So anyway, sorry.
I missed my cheap eat opportunity.
30 years later.
You were with, yeah. you were with somebody. I don't know if it was your sister or like she looked older than you. I don't know if it was a sister or an aunt or
No,
somebody. You were
no.
with somebody.
I don't know who it was. I was there alone as far as family wise. It might have just been people that were involved with Terry, like her group. I don't remember exactly who it was though.
Okay, so maybe it was another woman in Terry's group who followed you because she was like, well, where are you going?
Right.
But I remember saying to you, all right, if you want to get into professional wrestling, either get into community wrestling or high school wrestling, because again, didn't know how old you were. Get into community wrestling or school wrestling, some kind of amateur wrestling so you have amateur background, okay? If not, then do it the way I did it, get into martial arts, because there is a lot of similarities between judo and wrestling, which a lot of people don't realize until you've actually studied both, which I have, okay? And from there, go find a reputable professional wrestling school when you turn 18. Don't do backyard. Don't do any of this. You know.
Moral of the story:
and
I didn't
take,
listen to any of this shit. By the way,
no, well, you listen to the wrestling school part.
The-
Wasn't GWA a wrestling school?
yes, it was. But if you remember the story, the way I got into GWA was a very stupid idea. Again, that's for when I'm on somebody else's show. I don't need to tell the story now.
Wait, you sent a backyard tape to them.
No, close though, because
Okay.
I'm gonna throw Tony under the bus here. Tony had caught wind that there was a wrestling convention coming to town, and a whole bunch of different
Right.
federations and shit were going to be there. And him and a couple of our other friends got this bright idea of let's put together a tape of us in our backyard because we did the backyard stuff, and they'll pass it out like a
Yeah.
fucking demo tape to people. It get us into the
Okay.
business, and he talked me into it. I didn't really want to do it to begin with because at that point I kind of grown out of the aspirations of being a wrestler. I enjoyed wrestling, but I was more interested in music than wrestling. But he talked me into doing it, so I did it, and figuring nobody's ever going to see this tape, or I'm never going to meet any of the people when they make fun of us for this shit. A couple weeks later, we received a letter from the Grand Wrestling Alliance saying, after reviewing your tape, we've come to the three following conclusions. Number one, you guys have raw talent that, with the proper training, could be developed into, legitimate wrestlers. Number two, you have personalities that could be formatted into current storylines and talent. Number three, you guys are fucking nuts.
Mhm.
We'd like you to try out for Grand Wrestling Alliance. So I didn't follow your advice
So wait,
at all.
so how was I wrong? Hold on. How was I wrong? I was right. You sent them right.
Well, what had happened is
Uh,
Tony and a couple of our other friends went to the convention and just passed out VHS tapes to every federation. I didn't go to the convention. I forgot about it after we did the match until the letter showed up.
Oh, so it wasn't. Okay, so it wasn't you who handed it to them. It was okay.
No, it was actually my 20-year career is accredited to Tony Ferris, aka Michael Amadeus, because if he didn't get that full idea in his head, I probably never would have been discovered in any way, shape, or form.
And just to make it full circle again, just guess who had a conversation with John Linder yesterday about him coming to my wrestling school once it's officially opened after the zombie apocalypse.
Well, there you go. There you go. I'm happy
There
he's
it
still
is,
doing
yeah.
it. I'm happy he's still doing it. But
Well, because I know this isn't part of, like, I know you're trying to do this in chronological, but I want to address your full circle for a second.
oh, we lost chronological a while ago. It's okay. Go ahead.
So sometimes in wrestling, there's miscommunication. Okay.
Yep.
And there was a show in July that I was actually in, um, for Crossroads Wrestling. The who was trying to pick up the banner for doing charity wrestling because AWFR wasn't doing it any longer. So I was trying to give them information. I was trying to share them the ropes, if you would. If I mean, it's wrestling, so that what more appropriate term? This is the difference between regular wrestling shows and charity wrestling shows. And I come to find out that the girl who they were doing the charity for had a brain tumor. She's 11 years old.
Oh.
She has a brain tumor, and they're hoping for the best. And whatever money they can raise for this little girl,
Medical expenses and the like.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it.
So I'm like, oh, hell no. I'm not sitting on the sidelines for this one. I'm getting in the ring. I'm a cancer survivor. If anybody understands what she's going through, it's me.
Right.
Okay. And if anybody can give her any type of hope of surviving this and getting through this, hopefully it's me. So I started going to Asylum Pro Wrestling Academy to start working out. I started going to Joey Rizzo's Shoot Style Wrestling Academy to start working out again. I was supposed to go to the dungeon, Mark and Troy's mess. For whatever reason, I never got there. I think that was more of a... I knew where Franklinville was, and I knew where Claremont, Delaware was. I'd never heard of the township or borough that Mark's place was, and I was afraid of getting lost. Street shoot.
Street shoot. So.
And, so I would meet people that I'd worked with in the past and or would work with students that either Mike Tovar or Joey Rizzo had at their place, because I'm at the end of the day, I'm always going to be a coach. I've played and coached every single sport imaginable. So if there's a teaching opportunity, yeah, of course, I'm going to do it. So who did I fight? Oh, okay. So to your point, like, I never actually trained with the guy that I was going to fight because he was the bad guy. So, like, I never worked with the guy before in my life until that night, until the Crossroads show.
Right.
At least not in the ring. I mean, we had a running feud outside of the ring because he was managing the Monster Asylum and I was managing South Philly Fury. But that's the first time we ever locked up, was that night. And so, yeah, I was like, oh, no, this is a thing. I'm doing this. Do you remember Jess Cooper from Docs?
Jess Cooper.
She was best friends with Natalie. I know you remember Natalie.
Yeah, I kind of remember, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I know who Natalie is. I'm talking about the Jess Cooper. Like, I kind of remember, yeah.
Okay. I'll do it to you this way. CJ was allowed to valet for us because she was already one of Doc's students.
Right.
And Doc was cool with us using her because we were also helping him train her. Okay?
Right.
Natalie, same deal. Jess wasn't in Jersey, I think it's 17. She wasn't old enough. I think she was only 16 at the time, and she wasn't old enough to be formally trained.
Okay.
It was something like that. It was some kind of deal where her age was getting in the way. She was like a little bit younger than the other two. Okay, because I think CJ was 21, Nat was 18, and Jess was 16.
Might have been.
So. And so what I would do is when we were, and see, this is the thing that people don't understand. You can train somebody on the mats at any age because it's just grappling.
Right.
Okay? It's when you put them in the ring that they have to be a certain age, because now it's no longer amateur wrestling. Now it's professional wrestling.
However, I will go this far to state, because that rule was different in Colorado. Each territory or each state, their sporting commissions do have different rules. In Colorado, you could train a 16-year-old professionally. They just couldn't have their first match until they were 17.
I think that's the way it's in New Jersey too. So, and because in Pennsylvania, you have to be 18. Period. End of sentence.
Right.
But whereas in Jersey, maybe it was like you could start training at 17 and then have a match at 18. So maybe Jersey was like Colorado. Anyway, so when I would do my mat stuff with Natalie and CJ, we would include Jess. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when I got to Mike Tovar's and Joey Rizzo's, Jess reminded me, just showed up, and I was like, "Oh, you're going to valet for us?" She's like, "Of course I am. I was your student, remember?" I'm like, "No." I don't remember ever training you in the ring. She's like, "Well, you didn't train me in the ring because you weren't allowed. But when you would work with the other two on the mats, you would say, 'Jess, come in and work with us.'" I'm like, "Oh, I do remember that." Okay. And I said, "How old are you now?" She's like, 26. I'm like, "Well, come on in the ring then. Here you go." And I started working with Jess in the ring at Joey's and Mike's, and basically got her ready for Crossroads. Now, the idea being that even though she was my student all those years ago, and for the most part she still remembered what I taught her and could translate it into the ring from the mats, she was still rusty. I mean, obviously 10 years,
Right.
So we were just going to let her valet for that night. And then, but with the idea being that she wasn't meant to be just a valet. At some point she was going to be part of, full-fledged Fury. She was going to be one of my partners, in the same way that you, me, and Tony ran Youth Gone Wild, in that I was supposed to be a full-fledged partner, but because of medical somebody else always wound up being your third in our six-man instead of me.
Which explains why we allowed Youth Gone Wild to become South Philly Fury, because originally the idea was Youth Gone Wild was supposed to be kind of like what's the term I'm looking for? Freelance?
Freebird rules.
Yes, but we became South Philly Fury to take advantage of the Freebird ruling, which means the third man of the team would always switch, mainly because you had medical issues that couldn't allow you to do the third man.
Which I always thought I was still in cancer recovery. Come to find out that it was I was allergic to everything.
Especially Youth Gone Wild's bullshit.
Well, wrestling BS in general, but I'll save that conversation. That was an actual conversation with my allergist, but I'll save that for later. So Jess trained with me too, because the way we worded it, because I can tell you exactly how we worded it when we got to Doc's, because we were invited to work at Doc's, you and I.
Right.
By Tony, because Doc didn't have any tag teams. Well, I'm part of a natural tag team, so of course I'm interested, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you and I hadn't realized that we had met twice before. Once at Morgantown, Pennsylvania.
Right.
Okay, when you gave me back the elbow pads. And the second time, you were just getting ready to leave Soul City for Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
When I showed up with all of my original set of students to train them at Hard Rock Hamilton Soul City Wrestling School, John Saunders, J.C. Logan, my oldest daughter Heather, her friend Lisa, so I brought in my little tribe, okay, which wound up being the original South Philly Fury, while you were on your way to Colorado. So as you were leaving, I was coming in. Pretty much the same thing that happened with me and Jimmy Janetti and JT.
Ironically enough, that was also during the time that was the downfall of the original formation of YGW. That was when Tony and I had our falling out for many, many years, and the team was, obviously destroyed because of it. So, ironic, you were there at the end, the beginning, and the end again.
Yeah. And the ultimate irony is that my Fury is the one who actually took over for you guys as one of the natural tag teams over at Soul City. So now Tony's bringing Fury in to be, a tag team with me, you, and him, because he's like, oh, well, Chris does this and that, and I'm used to him, being in the ring with me, and DC, I've worked with him in a lot of the different schools that DC has ran, because Tony was one of my assistant trainers, so, he knew my style, and Tony just said, oh, yeah, the three of us will work, and to his credit, I think we did.
Well, to his credit, he had to bullshit me to come back, because if you remember, I retired in 2007, and I had no intentions of coming back to wrestling. Billy.
Yes. So what we did is the Fury had never lost our tag team and six-man championships in America's Wrestling Fundraisers. We just stopped running. Okay, so I said to Doc, well, this is what I would like to do. Since you don't have any tag teams whatsoever, I'm going to make some phone calls, see if I can, find a couple. And I would like the Fury to bring in, our America's tag team and six-man and have it be recognized at Devastation Wrestling Federation. And Doc was like, yeah, that actually sounds like an interesting idea. And that's what we did. Problem is, I had Scotty Ice. I didn't have Mean Mark, because Mean Mark Manson had moved to Tennessee.
Right.
Okay. So we didn't have our tag team. I had Jesse Logan, but I didn't have Johnny Logan because he had moved to Las Vegas.
Right.
So, and Harley was in Seaside Heights and didn't have transportation or something. I don't remember why he didn't come. So and I think Big Nasty had either moved or retired. So we didn't have half of our tag team. We didn't have 2/3 of our six-man. So I said, well, why don't we just do this? Why don't we just get Joey Warlock from X, who is still around, okay? And I think Slayer was willing to do it with us.
Right.
So we had 2/3 of X. And why don't we just get X back together again? Why don't we just get YGW back together again? And we can have this alphabet soup where the guys from X and the guy from YG Dub are going to be contracted by the South Philly Fury to defend our titles for us. And then I would just manage both groups, And I'm saying to you, because I remember, hitting you with this, I just hope the fans understand it. But somehow or another, God bless, the wrestling gods. You, me, and Tony explained it along with Joey and Mikey, and the fans were like, okay, yeah, we get that.
Well, I won't lie. To this day, I am still super impressed and awed at such a silly gimmick like YGW, which was created because Tony and I liked the song "You've Gone Wild" by Skid Row. That's literally all it was. Because originally we were going to call ourselves Damage Incorporated when we first created the gimmick. And with the falling out and the thing hadn't been seen for 12 years. Give or take, at least a decade, and coming out that first time at Devastation to YGW against the Latin Connection, and the crowd's response not only from our initial walkout, but we, you, me, Tony and Frankie Frizzo, we controlled that crowd that whole entire time. That by the time I walked back into that locker room, I was in complete awe that people remembered, that they still got it. You know what I mean?
And I was nervous for a different reason, behind the fact that in wrestling, if you borrow from somebody else's gimmick, so the fans at least say, okay, it's like this, okay?
Right.
They'll get it. They'll be like, okay, so they understand the precedent. What we were doing, where a faction was renting out two other factions. I don't remember that ever happening before, and I honestly don't remember that ever happening since. You know?
For anybody listening that's thinking about it, don't do it. Don't. It's a monster that's hard to control. Don't do it. Okay. If you steal, just don't do it. It's a headache.
So you got me representing South Philly Fury. You got Joe and Mike representing X. You got you and Tony representing YG Dub. And then on top of that, if you remember correctly, CJ liked how you and I used to clown around so much. Because our thing was we didn't take anything seriously until we got in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
And even then we didn't take it seriously.
Well, I was a little bit older, so I didn't want to break anything.
Oh,
but as far as I was concerned, it was for money, chalk, and marbles at that point, you know?
Yeah, well, again, taking things seriously and not taking things seriously in the ring. I'm reminded of a match against Steve, the Bhutan Dragon. Steve Morgan?
Yes.
Yeah, Steve Morgan. Where Deacon Frost, thank you. That was the original name. Yeah. That's why I was tripping on. I kept like Steve Deacon. No, that don't sound right. But
well, in your defense, I never called him by his right name. I always purposely messed up the Bhutan Dragon or whatever he was really called.
Yeah, I kept calling him the Poo-Tang Dragon.
Yes, exactly. Because there was a black dragon. And I would always go back and forth, and I'm like, you mean this dragon? No, that dragon. What? Right. Which dragon are you talking about? The one with this mask or the one with the other mask?
But the match itself, while in the match, you're outside in the ring. I'm getting stomped to the ground, and each time he'd put a boot to me, you'd make some smart-ass comment, and I get stomped again, and another smart-ass comment, I get stomped again, to the point that I'm screaming at you, will you stop pissing him off? Like, there was no seriousness in that.
Well, one of the things we have to explain to the fans is Steve is half deaf. He can only hear out of one ear.
Right.
So I didn't realize that the direction I was in, he could actually hear what I was saying.
And each stomp got a little harder.
And because Steve was called Deacon Frost. So my big thing was I always wanted to team up Deacon Frost with Scotty Ice.
You know what? Get him out of retirement and do it now. You base it off of Game of Thrones. Just call him Winter is Coming.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm definitely borrowing that. Absolutely, yes, that's the thing. That's my next Facebook post as soon as I get off this phone.
But yeah, I mean, that'll lead into some great questions, though. Get back into the interview part of this. Although I've been enjoying the trip down memory lane. Let's get into some of the more particulars and specifics for you. What was more enjoyable throughout your career? This is going to be kind of a two-parter question. Would it be the in-ring work as actual Freebird DC Laurie, or more the, as you said, coach role, whether training or coming out of the ring as a manager / coach? That's part one. Mm-hmm. Part two, which was more enjoyable to you or brings back the most memories to you, was it working the serious feuds and matches and the slow burns, or was it more the goofy stuff like what we did with Youth Gone Wild? You know, the ice cream on the way to the hospital and shiny and spins type things.
Yeah, very good question. There's not going to be an easy answer to that.
I didn't expect one.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think I'm always going to be a coach or a trainer first. I mean, there's a certain comfort to that, to knowing that you're giving back to the business, that you're trying to pass the torch to the next generation. You know, like at some point, you know, I'm 58, I'll be 59 this July, which means if you do the math, 60 next July. I'm not going to be able to do this forever, okay? You know, so at some point, I'm going to have to hang up the boots. But, that being said, I also just bought a brand new singlet.
I did see that on Facebook.
Yeah, you saw the version where I said I'm buying this. You didn't see the version where, like, I actually DM'd it to a couple people and said, so what do you think? You know?
Right,
because so, like, there's actually DM pictures of me in it because... Hold on one second. I'm trying to get this to shut up. My TV talks now. It's like, shut up. I don't care. Yeah, so now that I've sent it to a couple of people, a couple of my students, and with me in the singlet saying, what do you think? I can now feel comfortable enough that the next time I see somebody who I trust to take a professional picture, like the Duchess or somebody, that, you know, I can actually put it out there and say, hey, what do you guys think of me in my new singlet? You know, that kind of thing. But yeah, so what was your question? Oh, right. Okay.
It's all coming back to me.
There's always going to be a part of me that enjoys being a coach, a trainer, especially now given that I'm going to be running my own school instead of for somebody. This is mine. With, ironically, Mike Tovar, Bruce Wynn, and Stacy Atwater. Mike Tovar, I don't think you would know because he was from Wisconsin originally.
Okay.
So you guys would have never
officially met. Yeah.
Yeah. Bruce Wynn, you might have met when he was part of 38 Proof with Johnny Logan. He goes by Jackson Hex now.
It sounds familiar. I probably know him if I saw him.
Yeah, I think it was Jackson Daniels back in the day. Good guy. His real name is Bruce Wynn. I'm trying to get him to change his gimmick name to like some kind of Batman gimmick because Bruce Wayne.
Jackman, you could play off of both.
Yeah, there you go. You know, and ironically, his favorite character is Batman.
Nice.
So, yeah, you know, so one of my running things with him is if I ever talk him into being Batman, Jess can be Batgirl because Jess actually played, you know, it was a Halloween show, so she was dressed as Batgirl.
Okay.
For the Halloween show, and Doc actually let her finally go out, but not with us, which pissed me off. It was somebody else. I want to say Big Country or Southern Justice, whatever he was calling himself at the time. But I don't know if that's right. But I remember her going out as Batgirl with somebody who, like, the gimmick did not match at all. Because, like, if it was Big Country, well, either as the Big Country or Southern Justice gimmick, he's a cowboy, yeah? Okay? So what's that got to do with Batgirl? You know? And why is she going out with him when she was supposed to be part of our clique? You know, I'm the one who trained her, so why is she going out with him? So, like, but it is what it is. Anyway, so I said to Jess, you still have the Batgirl outfit. And she's like, I don't think so. Why? I said, because if I can talk Bruce into being Batman, Bruce Wayne, we can go find you another Batgirl gimmick, and you can come out as Batgirl again. And I said, and I'll be Alfred.
There you go.
I'm already bald.
They can feud me. I'll be the Joker.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm not stepping back in. I have always said I've got one more left in me, but we all know I'm not coming back. I've gotten too comfortable in an interview chair.
Yeah. Let's see what happens if you ever show up at my schools. Let's see what happens then.
You know what?
You
know what? I've always been scared of going back, even to just work out, because like, one, I'm scared I'll catch the bug again, and after all this time off, and this is shoot, all this time off, all the injuries that I should have felt in my 20-year career have caught up to me. So all the things I never felt that people wondered, how do you not feel that? I feel it every day. You know, so I don't know if my body can physically handle in the same way it used to. Number two, I'm scared to death that I'll catch the bug and you know, by the time, like, you know me, man. When I jump in head first. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm in the deep end, all in. There's no waiting with the waders on in the shallow end. I jump deep first, and I don't, you know, with company and being a father and a 9-to-5, I don't know if I could devote that time like I used to.
Right.
And of course, the other thing I'm scared of, like we talked about before, getting that first match or even a mock match in the ring, and I forget how to call half the fucking shit we used to call. I'm going to give you that thing that I spin around and do that thing you think, you know the move I'm talking about. Just go with it. You know what I mean?
You know, you used to say that all the time, and it never happened once. So that's like just one of your, that's like, you know how everybody on the planet has had the dream where they have a test that they didn't study for and they go to class naked?
Right.
You know, that's like, all that is your brain saying, hey, you know, you have to deal with the issue that you think you're not ready for something, but you really are, as long as you studied and as long as you remembered to get dressed before you went to school, you'll be fine.
There's another thing I'm scared of. I'll show up naked. No.
Well, that'll scare everybody.
That would scare everybody. But no, I mean,
but the point I'm trying to make is, because you worked with me getting doc students ready, okay? And you used to tell me that same issue, that you were worried that you wouldn't remember how to call it, this, that, and the other thing. But you and I worked in the ring together training doc's kids, and you were absolutely fine. In fact, the only time you ever took umbrage, if you will, okay, is the time that I said, do you remember how to do, I don't remember what I asked you, but it was a tag team specialist move.
Double back elbow.
Sure. What was it?
Double back elbow with a double back elbow drop. We were giving it to oh my, what's her name? I apologize, Slayer, in advance for this, but it was Slayer's wife.
Well, see, and you're talking about not remembering something, and you remember exactly the move that I asked you to remember how to do.
Right, but I can't remember. I feel terrible. I can't remember her name. Destiny. Silly D.
She's changed it several times.
Right,
She's
but
changed it several times.
It was her. We were giving her the move for the other students to see, and you were like,
at the time, it was the Empress Simply Divine.
Simply Divine. Thank you. That was the name I was trying to look for. And she was nice enough to take the double elbow drop from us, but it was you asking me if I knew how to do a double. I looked at you because, again, I prided myself on being a tag team specialist with Youth Gone Wild, with East Coast Connection, with The Fallen, and just looked at you like, "Are you serious?"
No, your exact words were, "Who do you think you're talking to?"
Yep.
Because I remember, I may not remember what I asked you if you knew how to do, which you remember, but I remember your response. Who do you think you know? Who do you think you? Because I was like, I don't know. I've never worked with you before in the ring. And rule of thumb is when you're working with somebody in the ring for the first time, you always ask them, "What do you know how to do?"
Oh man, so yeah, again, we were never able to take anything serious. You know how to do a back elbow? Are you serious?
Well,
Which,
it was a double back elbow, thank you and it was a double back elbow drop, thank you very much.
Which moral of the story, without ever working together before, and the little umbrage that we had with each other, we whipped Divine off the rope and nailed it perfectly. Timing completely off. We've been working for years. No, not just me, both of us. Because I remember your reaction afterwards. You got up and you're like, "Okay, yeah, he knows tag team." Oh, Jesus Christ!
But if you remember correctly, that was a master's class. That was an advanced class that you and I were teaching that day, because all of Doc's students were. I was like, "Okay, does anybody ever do tag team shit with you?" And they were all like, "No." And I'm like, "Do you want to learn?" And they were like, "Yeah."
I remember that.
And it was like, all right, well, this a lot of this might be stuff you've never learned before, so I'm going to start with it's a very specific way to run a rope, because one guy might be going one way, the other guy might be going the other way. It's a very specific way to roll and fall. You may think you know. But the timing and pacing and everything involved is just a little bit different. And they're like, okay. So by the time we were finished, we were showing them, falls and moves and stuff like that they'd never seen before in their lives, let alone knew how to take or give.
Right.
And if you remember correctly, by the end of the day, Simply Divine was the only one brave enough to even try the final stuff that we were working on. Everybody else was like, "No, we're good. We're good. Relax."
Which was typical of both Dana and I. Like, we start with the basics, and then all of a sudden we go into the advanced, and then all of a sudden it's like, "Well, we came up with this shit too." It always wound up into, "Let's try something you've never done or seen before." Divine, come here. Oh my God.
Now, and if you remember, a lot of people, because at Doc's, even though I had been a worker with the original wrestling fundraisers and started training people there and at Soul City, like Doc himself didn't even know I had been a worker at one time.
Right.
Okay. He just thought that I was a director-producer who just happened to be smart in the business, And so one night I got in the ring and I don't remember who I was working with, but they were doing something and I said, "No, you're doing it wrong. Let me show you." And I got in and I said, "This is what you're doing. This is what you should be doing." And Doc came out and said, "DC, what are you doing?" "Well, they're doing it this way. I'm showing them how to do it the right way." And then, what's the word? I showed the maneuver, basically. I demonstrated.
Right.
I couldn't get the word out. And Doc was like, "Oh, I didn't know you were a worker." I'm like, "Yeah, before."
See, I had that.
Okay, go ahead.
I had that kind of reaction the other day. Again, remember I told you we did a Surviving the Storm episode live on Facebook Live, and what that is just what, for people who don't know, what this is me and another guy from Indiana sit together. It's actually two Chris's. It's kind of funny. So the tagline to it is "A Tale of Two Chris's." we just talk, and get somebody to listen to during this time with the COVID-19 going on and shit. Well, last episode was wrestling, and what started that is we were talking about my career, and all of a sudden I discovered that Chris from Indiana is also a former professional wrestler. Had no idea. It's like, we were having a conversation, and all of a sudden he finally slipped it out. I'm like, I had no idea you were a worker.
Well, and it's funny how people find out, like, this has nothing to do with me, other than Ada Marie told me the story one time. Ada was somebody who came to Docs who was eventually, well, actually her tryout, and you'll appreciate this because her tryout for Docs was that her and her friend Desiree, I think they were working as a tag team. I want to say that's correct. Okay.
Okay.
So sometimes you do to somebody else what you hate having done to you, but you have absolutely no other choice.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a spot for a girls' tag team.
Right.
Okay. But I said, look, I don't have that for you tonight. I said, but since you're both here, if you want to do a Japanese match, and they're like, a what? And I'm like, okay, I forgot you're new. So basically, in the old days, when you went to Japan, because a lot of Japanese promotions couldn't afford to bring 2 tag teams from the States, they would have the tag team actually face off against each other. So somehow or another, that the term Japanese tag match came into being, or Japanese match, where the natural tag team from the States actually winds up working each other,
right,
in Japan. So literally, my first match ever was a Japanese match because I had to go up against my own tag partner. Except we weren't in Japan; we were in our home gym. Go figure. So anyway, so I explained to them how I got started, and there's a history behind it. I said, so what we could do is we could have you two go up against each other, and we could actually have it for my son's title. And they're like, okay, well, what's that? And then I had to explain my son has muscular dystrophy. In order to do awareness, because my son's in a wheelchair, he can't defend his own title. He has the featherweight title, and usually somebody has to defend it for him. If they win, they can hand it back to him. If they lose, then I have to pick somebody else to have go back after it again at another show.
Right.
And they said, well, that's a lot of pressure. I said, actually, it's not. My son's not here tonight, so if you screw up, he's not going to shake his head at you in shame.
But don't let him get a hold of the video.
Yeah, exactly. Because when somebody does something wrong, he actually does do that. And if you do it right, he laughs and smiles at you. So yeah, he's been around the business for 20. He'll be 21. So all his life, basically. Almost 21 plus glorious years. He's been around the business.
And I'm sure he's seen enough YGW stuff that he knows what's wrong, how to do it wrong. He knows what wrong looks like.
No, stop. Well, I refuse to comment. You should know better. What's it called? Self-depredation? Or
can we get ice cream on the way to the hospital?
Yeah. No, that was funny.
That was funny.
Anyway.
That was so random. Sorry, go ahead.
We're still famous for that. We're still famous for that. Somebody mentioned that to me a couple 3 weeks ago. That
one, and Shiny and Spins were our crowning achievements. They really were. It's like even my wife, she's still to this day, like she won't watch any of my matches. She won't watch any match. But she'll go on YouTube and watch Shiny and Spins.
Of course.
She'll go and watch Ice Cream on the way to the hospital. Yeah.
I still have the belt. And I call it the Shiny and Spins belt. Anyway, so Ada says, well, that's a lot of pressure. I said, actually, it's the reverse if you think about it. Danny's not here. I said, it's literally my and my son's title, so I'm the one saying, yes, you can defend it. So, and I know you're new to the business. I know you're used to being a tag team, so I know all of this going in. The only thing you have to do is don't look bad in front of the fans. If you mess up that only I notice or you notice, that's one thing. Don't make it obvious to the fans, because that's one of the big things that newbies do.
Mm-hmm.
They'll go to do a move, screw it up, and instead of just moving on, they'll try to reset it again. No, leave it, let it go, save it for next time. Okay, because right now the fans don't know that you screwed up. When you make it obvious, then they're going to start the "you fucked up" chant. So let it go. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I said, plus, once we explain what you're doing, everybody's going to have a feel-good moment, okay? Because one of you is going to be defending the title, and whichever one of you that winds up being, you're going to get a huge pop at the end when you win it.
Right.
And even the heel in this point, might still get some pop behind the fact that, hey, well fought match, blah, 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 blah. And that's exactly how we explained it. And I said, all right, Ada, you're the smaller one. You're the face. You're the one defending. Des, obviously that makes you the heel. Both you guys, if you're tag partners, you know how to make each other look strong. Make sure you both look strong, even though, Ada, you're the one going over.
Right.
This way, when we bring you in as the tag, the tag opponents for Triple F, Femme Fatale Fury, next time they'll be like, oh, okay, I remember those two girls. They're the two that had to face off against each other for the featherweight title, which we now call any weight title, but at the time it was the featherweight title. Blah 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 blah. And when they came back, after the match, and came back in the locker room area, they were sweating, they were nervous, they had these looks on their faces that I swear to God, the only time I've ever seen this look on anybody's face is after a match and after somebody has defended Danny's title, and when they come up to me and say, did we do a good job for Danny? It's a very specific look. I've only ever saw it in those cases.
Right.
But and I cannot describe it to you unless you've actually been in the locker room to see it. But they had that look, and I'm like, oh my God, you two were fine. Yes, I've already talked to Doc. We're inviting you back to work Triple F. The next time there's a free booking. And they were like, oh my God, are you sure? We were so nervous. I said, I could tell because I've been doing this forever. The fans couldn't. You were fine.
Oh, man. I'll tell you what, as much as I've been enjoying this, we are at a 2-hour mark for a half-an-hour show. So I definitely, yes. I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to bring you back on for part 2. Obviously,
part 2, this is already 4 parts.
This is already 4 parts, right? But I mean, I'll have you back on where we could delve even deeper into the career and some of the story, and because there's plenty more to go. Trust me, I know this. He's got 30 years behind him on this. But I definitely want to make sure we give the shine to the fact that you had mentioned the fact that you were opening up your new school. So go ahead and tell everybody what's going on with that, where it's going to be, and obviously when this is going to start after the coronavirus situation lifts.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna start my shameless plug by answering the question that you started to try to ask me very shortly. Okay. When I first got into the business, I think I was 80 pounds less than I am now. So I was like 5'8", 145. Okay.
Okay.
I'm still 5'8", obviously, but 222, and I'm no longer on the right side of 30. I'm on the wrong side of 50.
Sitting at 43, I know how you feel.
Yeah. So what I tell anybody that walks into my school, okay, and after 30 years, I think this is my 6th attempt at this school. So, and somebody on another radio show said, "Oh, well, you must really know what you're doing if this is your 6th time." And I said, "I do, except how to make money at it. That's why it's my 6th time."
Exactly.
You know, there's a lot of my students working in the business right now, but like I'm not seeing any of that money. But anyway, what I tell everybody when you walk in, learn exactly the way I learned how to do it. From the very bottom all the way to the very top. Learn how to do security. Learn how to be ring crew. Learn how to, what the job of taking tickets is. What it means to make sure that, the card goes, taped up to the locker room. Learn every single aspect, putting up the chairs, if we have chairs. How much do the chairs cost? Do we need to rent them? Do we need to buy them? All of this is going to make sense at one point or another. So, you start your way at the bottom, setting up the chairs, putting them back again, setting up the ring, putting it back again, taking tickets if you have to, working security if you have to. We also have our own production company. Besides learning how to work the mic, okay, learn how to hold the mic. Besides learning how to talk into a camera, learn how to hold the camera, okay? Because as you're working your way up and paying your dues and doing all these jobs, by the time you're finally allowed to get in the ring, okay, in front of fans, and only then after you've done all these other things, and you've paid your dues in the ring, you've run the ropes, you've taken your bumps, you learned how to do combinations, reverses from, the holds, you know how to do chain, everything, okay? Eventually, you're going to want to be a booker because you're going to get older. You're not going to know how to do it anymore. Or, well, you know how to do it, you just can't, okay? You might want to be a director or producer, okay? Make everybody else look good and sound good. You might want to be, God bless your soul, a promoter, and then really know every single job I taught you on the way, you're going to have to know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then assign the proper person to it, because some people can do it all. God bless them. I'm not one of them. I like to teach them how to do it and then have that trust in that person to know that, okay, they learned from me, they know how to do it my way. Not necessarily the right way, my way. And eventually, guys are going to learn that there's 3 sides to a story. His story, her story, and what really happened.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah, your side, their side, and what really happened. So, and that's what we do at our school, because, again, you may start out thinking you only want to be a fan, and then find out you caught the bug like the rest of us and want to, get in there and start jumping around, okay? Mm-hmm. Or you may want to be the next, who's popular right now, but since we mentioned in passing, CM Punk used to be very popular not too long ago, okay? You might want to be the next, Daniel Bryan I like a lot, so let's mention him.
There you go.
I like him as well. But you might find out that because of your size, or because of your disposition, or because of your medical-ish, something, somewhere, somehow or another, you might not be able to do it anymore, okay? Does that mean you have to leave the business completely? Well, no, it doesn't. Because if you went to a school like mine, and you had to learn how to pay your dues before you could learn how to pay it forward, You already know how to do it from the very beginning to the very end, from the very bottom to the very top. And somewhere in there, you said to yourself, gee, if I can't jump in the ring any longer, I think I would like to do this. And you already know how to do that because we taught you how to do it. So after 30 plus glorious years, when you doing your final run might not actually be a thing any longer, you know how to do something else. Okay? That's what we offer at our school. Okay?
Nice. Now, where can people get their get the information if they want to try out for the school, or maybe their workers that just want a facility to work out in, or maybe even help with the training? Like, where can they contact to get the information, address, phone number, the like for this school?
Right now, the best way to do it is just to contact me directly. One, because I don't remember the address of the school, and two, because it's not open until after the zombie apocalypse.
World War Z.
Yeah, you can reach me, Dan Lauria, Lauria on Facebook. It'll be me and the Diamond Desire, who we've been calling Jess Cooper, because that's her real name, all day. You'll see a picture of me and her in the ring at Crossroads. And by the way, yes, in case you're wondering, Jess did pick the name Diamond Desire as an homage to Doc Diamond.
Nice.
Okay. And because I said you can do Fury, because that's where I met her. I said you could do some kind of name that has something to do with Fury, or since we met at Doc's, and that's where I trained you, you can do something to homage Doc. And she says, how do you feel about Diamond Desire? I said, perfect. Let's run with it. And, and on the Facebook, like I said, it'll be a picture of me and her. In the parentheses, it'll say DC, so it'll be Dan Lauria DC. On my phone, you can actually see my theme song. I don't know if that's true on all of them, but you'll see my theme song is Freebird, obviously the Freebird DC Laurie. Okay, so do me a favor, do not contact the actor Dan Lauria from the Wonder Years.
Because he'll be wondering what the fuck.
Because that's happened before, so we know that we both exist. But since he's a little bit more famous a lot more famous than I am, I would ask you to do me the favor, make sure you get the right Dan Lauria.
I will say this much, though. If you contact the other one, ask him if he'd like to do an interview for Breaking the Fourth Wall. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Quick shameless plug on my end.
Not the first time we've done that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So on my Facebook, if it says info about, it says my Dan Lauria at Comcast.net. So if you don't remember from this, just it's right there. Also, my cell phone number, I give it out freely because it's really, except to check on my kids, it's the only time I use my cell phone, is to promote the school. And that's 610-513-6924. If you don't call me without texting me and saying who you are first, because I promise you I will not answer the phone.
It's true. I'm programmed. I'm programmed into his phone. I'm programmed into his phone, and he still won't answer me.
Oh, stop. But once the zombie apocalypse is lifted, we will be training out of Claremont, Delaware. Before, the school was called by something else at one time. But literally, it's like you take Ridge Avenue, and it's like as soon as you leave Marcus Hook and go into Claymont, it's on the left. I'll get the exact address. I know it's in a warehouse, Building C, and there's other stuff involved. But anyway, I'm not Jaden who like has everything memorized and can cut a promo. You ask him one question, he cuts a promo for the whole thing. I haven't even gotten there yet. But we are going to, I do know when we're going to be open. It's Monday through Thursday, 6 to 9, 6 to 10 if you all behave yourself. So I'll make it another hour so that we can go, 4 hours, 4 nights. And then as part of the process of you training, we're going to do like little mock shows, like little mock TV tapings.
Like the old Outlaws Den.
Exactly. Okay, and we're going to do those once a month, or maybe even twice, but at least once a month, where you come in as if you're coming in on call. Here's your, this is your match. This is who you're going over. This is how much time you have. Blah blah blah. We're taping the whole thing. Bring the loved one so that they can be a plant in the audience, and so they know who's booing and who's cheering, why. And we're going to do it from beginning to end as if you're in front of live fans, because you're in front of your family. And God knows your family can be your worst critic sometimes, your best and your worst. So you get the full effect. And we also have an agreement with Top Rope Wrestling, who I don't know all the details. I just know that it's a thing. Top Rope has some kind of thing with AWA in the UK. So they're going to be coming to, when they come, we don't call it the Academy, we call it the Arena.
Nice.
So they're going to be coming to the Arena once a month for TV taping that goes on YouTube and Goku? No, Goku.
Roku?
Goku? That one.
Roku!
And they're also no, Goku's the Dragon Ball Z guy, right?
Right, he's a character from Dragon Ball Z.
Okay.
Z.
I get them confused sometimes because I actually use Goku to explain how we do certain things in the school. But anyway, and they're on broadcast TV in the UK. So you get to be on YouTube and Roku here, and then broadcast TV on the UK. So I guess you have to watch the language. I'm not sure how it works in Great Britain. But yeah. So, and come hell heck, I was going to say come hell or high water, then I'm like, wait, we're not on broadcast. This is podcast.
Yeah, I was about to say there's no censorship here. There's a mature rating on the episode.
So once we get our school up and running again, hopefully we'll finally get to go to Canada and go see John Pizza Man Barrett like we were supposed to a couple of years ago and never got there. So Canada may be in our future, and with Top Rope, the Great Britain may be in our future. Who knows? I don't know. All I know is right now, come to our school, get trained. You'll at least be able to work in Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania.
Hey, everybody starts somewhere. I came from South Philly, and I got to work all the way to Colorado. So I mean, it can happen. You just gotta have the gotta have the drive to make it happen.
Exactly.
But
God knows the only reason why I ever drove to West Virginia is because we had a show there. But that's a story for another time.
That's for part 2 or part 5, as Dan pointed out. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this, and I am going to have Dan back on. It was a pleasure reliving this. It's been a while since we talked, and it's fun just to hear the stories. I definitely want to get more of them in because I know there's more to be told. So we will definitely, hopefully, set up for another episode here very, very soon. But you guys, thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this in any capacity, hit that thumbs up button, like, share, comment, subscribe. Check out all the other great podcasts of Realm of the Mist Entertainment, and of course our sister channel, Sounds Dicey Gaming, for tabletop and video game Let's Play. And of course, if you prefer your podcast in audio-only format, you can find Realm of the Mist Entertainment on Anchor.fm, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, or wherever quality podcasts can be heard. Again, guys, thank you for joining us. Thank you to our guests, and I will catch you on the next Breaking the Fourth.